In this confusing landscape and the continuous growing spectrum of LLMs, what do you suggest enterprises to basically go for? What is the thumb rule to choose an LLM for a typical enterprise?
So I think um, there are different natural trade-offs between model size, latency, and cost, and different tasks may require different model sizes or different latency requirement and also different cost requirement, right? And um, other considerations are, as you mentioned, the level of isolation required. Maybe my enterprise is not willing to send data outside the VPC, or maybe my enterprise is even air gapped for most of the kind of interactions, and you want something that runs completely locally with full isolation. So there's definitely like these non-functional constraints on the problem. I find it hard to believe that uh, an enterprise will have a single LLM inside it, maybe further down the road, but right now there are so many different solutions, again with different trade-offs on latency and cost, and also task specificity. So you may have an optimal model to kind of write marketing materials and another model optimized for generating code or for having chat around your code base or things like that. Even for Tab 9, we're using a bunch of different models that have exactly these different trade-offs in terms of latency, size, and cost, because the kind of behavior that you'd like to get in code completion, which is almost instantaneous, like in a very short bracket of a few hundreds of milliseconds, is very different from the latency requirements of Tab 9 chat, that is like a conversational interface in which you're willing to wait a little longer, right? And this allows us to kind of use a combination of different models with these different trade-offs. And I expect other products to go in the same way, to kind of use a combination of different models with different trade-offs to satisfy different product features. Right? So,
That's interesting. So, are you saying there is going to be an instruct based LLM and one for summarization, and one is fine tuned for a specific lexical terminology? So, when an enterprise has access to these specialized LLMs, how do they orchestrate? Is that where things like LangChain and LLM, I mean, the Llama index come in? Is that the use case for LangChain?
this is one maybe of the use cases for LangChain, although I expect, not only as you do with LangChain, not only to coordinate calls between different LLMs, but also between other systems and systems of record, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's definitely going to be room for something like AI 21 Studio, if you're familiar with that, or Google Model
Right.
Garden, which is something that allows you to start maybe with a small family of models with different sizes, different trade-offs, and then fine tune them to different tasks and get something that is within the same studio but has very different trade-offs or combinations or specializations of models across the ecosystem. And again, in Tab 9, we also think about it the same way of having like some studio that allows you to specialize different models in your organization for different departments or different code bases or different needs, because it's not likely that a single model will be kind of the solution for all of these different specialized verticals, let's call.
Got it. Got it. So just like we deal with multiple databases, we are going to have multiple LLMs that we are going to consume.
I think
Interesting.
so. I think so, and I think just like we don't have a single database provider, for some things you use Mongo, for some things you use Postgres, for some things you use something else. I think it's also unlikely that we'll converge on a single provider, that will be a single model to rule them all. Of course, there are going to be some big players. Maybe Google is going to have like a single vertex or something, and they will try to use that as a big hammer to solve all problems, right? But I think in reality, there's going to be some diversity of providers, model sizes, and products that use these. Your, your,
Absolutely.
your analogy of databases is, I think, quite appropriate. Yeah.
Right. At least for relational databases, we have standards like JDBC and ODBC for connection. So I hope LangChain or Llama Index will raise up to that and become the JDBC or ODBC for at least certain LLMs.
Yeah, I think it's more complicated than that. It's a little more subtle because in JDBC, everything is deterministic, right? You insert something to the database, you select, and you get the same results. When you deal with these kind of models, if you switch model A with model B, the behavior of the actual product may change quite substantially, right? So it's a little more subtle than just having a uniform API, but the kind of the analogy I think transfers well.